always said, once a giant, always a giant. For me, it's only a giant.
Giants fans, welcome back to another episode of Only a Giant. Thanks so much for being here. Welcome back to the show here. I'm your host, Michael Doherty. For your new followers out there, if you could, please like and subscribe. And for your current followers out there that haven't liked and subscribed yet, come on, man. Shame on you. Let's go. Help a brother out. Come on. So here we are, guys. Unfortunately, now to the bad. Vikings 28. Giants 6. Not a pretty game. Obviously, we all had expectations for this team to be able to beat an average team. And what happened? We looked horrible, and the Vikings looked better than expected. I don't know if that is a combination of middle-of-the-road defense and horrible offense on our part that made them look much better than they are. But, Sam Darnold looked like he should have been, drafted out of the Jets. And I think over the span of what we see or what we have seen from Sam Darnold, that's not the quarterback that he is. So I tend to believe it was a combination of the defense not playing great and the offense not establishing any drives and showing any type of fight, quite honestly. But yeah, I guess let's just talk about it. And, to be honest with you, I was ready to come here and throw some blame on DJ, throw some blame on the offensive line, throw some blame on Brian Daboll with the play calling. And, I kind of sat back after the game and, honestly, even this morning when I was getting ready to originally record, and I thought the TV broadcast angles, like you just don't really see a lot that you hope to see. You don't see the all 22, you don't see the routes that wide receivers are running, if there's any separation. And I didn't want to make a knee-jerk reaction. Obviously, I wasn't happy with how Jones played yesterday. Nobody was. But it really kind of felt like, just based off what you're seeing, offensive line didn't play great. The play calling looked horrible. So really, I was ready to kind of throw a little bit of the blame everywhere. But I waited till a little bit later in the day. I got some of the advanced metrics. I got, videos on X where clearly there were open receivers, and everything that I'm seeing now, guys, this is on Daniel Jones. Like I hate to be that guy, and I don't mean to be the guy here that flip-flops and blames everything on Daniel Jones, and the next week is all about Daniel Jones. I've been a supporter of his. I've seen the good, I've seen the bad. I think I've been pretty fair-minded with him, and I was ready to give him a chance this year, but ultimately I knew that this was a prove-it year, and I've said that. He has a potentially competent offensive line. He has some weapons for once, and Brian Daboll is calling the plays, and he tends to be pretty quarterback-friendly. Now, it is a little bit of a tougher system to learn, I think, but really at this point, as much as, Kafka was calling plays before, this was still Brian Daboll's system. And it was bad. It was really, really, really bad. Not only was it bad, it was just downright atrocious, to be completely honest with you. It's once again, it's kind of hard to see from the broadcast, on game day as to what you're seeing. But I saw a lot of Daniel Jones double clutching, patting the ball, trying to step up into a pocket that was relatively clean for the most part, and running into sacks. And that's the stuff that you can't see. Obviously, the other thing you see is pre-snap trying to read the defense, and post-snap, the Vikings changing everything up on him, and Daniel Jones not being able to process that information. This is all kind of why I wanted to wait until a little bit later in the day to record. And I guess we'll dive a little bit more into the details, and let's start with the stats. Giants offense had roughly 240 yards. 186 of it came from Daniel Jones throwing the ball, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Running the ball, really Devin Singletary was mainly the lead rusher here at 37 yards and 15 yards receiving, averaged under 4 yards per carry. But ultimately with Devin Singletary, I do like what I saw there. You didn't see a lot, but you saw some shiftiness. You saw some decisiveness to hit the hole when he had to. Not a lot of great, I would say, but not a lot of bad either with Devin Singletary. I think for the most part, you liked what you saw. Malik Neighbors, 5 catches for 66 yards. I do believe he had a drop as well. Nothing crazy, nothing bad. Caught the ball when thrown to him, other than that one early drop on a play that really should not have gotten the ball. And then Wan'Dale Robinson, the most targeted receiver on the New York Giants. I believe he had 12 targets, 6 catches for 44 yards, and multiple missed throws to Wan'Dale Robinson that really could have resulted in over 100 yards for Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, who probably would have been the starter of this game if Daniel Jones could have just made some throws, sat in the pocket a little bit more and read the defense and reacted to it. But that ultimately didn't happen. So offensively, honestly, like kind of I talked about earlier, looked pretty bad, just as bad as last year, probably. Hard to see in the broadcast angle, but just a lot of pumping, double clutching, trying to step up into a pocket that wasn't there, and scrambling a little bit when you really didn't need to, which resulted in sacks. So once the storm kind of settled, or maybe it still hasn't settled at this point, maybe it's worse now that we're seeing the advanced metrics and stuff of that nature, but we see what actually happened. Wide receivers, where it looked like there was little separation to none on the broadcast, wasn't true. Wide receivers, according to Next Gen Stats, had 4.4 yards of separation, which is 4th best in the NFL. Now, yes, that does take into account zone coverage and sitting in zones and stuff of that nature that obviously good receivers can do. But 4th best in the NFL means something. They were getting separation. Daniel Jones just wasn't hitting the receivers. Malik Neighbors averaged 3.9 yards of separation, which is 8th among all wide receivers. Good stuff there, guys. Good stuff that you see there. So you think, okay, they were getting the separation, but the offensive line was probably the issue, right? No time to throw the ball, getting pressured a lot. Not the case. Daniel Jones had 2.82 seconds to throw, which ranked 12th in the NFL. And what does that tell you? I mean, obviously, it doesn't mean everything, but that also probably shows you that maybe the offensive line and play calling weren't really the issue. Maybe it was Daniel Jones. So we'll get into the offensive line in just a moment, but let's start with Jones and kind of get back onto that. And once again, I don't mean to make this a bash fest on Daniel Jones, but me, somebody that really kind of came into this game willing to give him the chance, willing to be a fan and root for the guy. It's so hard to come out of this with any type of positivity. He clearly was struggling to process what the Vikings defense were showing him pre-snap and then adjusting to what was happening post-snap, because all that was changing a lot. They didn't blitz that much. Now they blitzed maybe more than what people are letting on to, because this is a Brian Flores defense, but a lot of it was 3, the up front 3 and maybe a 4th blitzer. And there were some blitzing, like I said, but they were just often showing one thing and bailing and changing the look to something else post-snap that Daniel Jones clearly was struggling reading. That's an issue, guys. Even for him, that's bad. I saw somebody on Twitter kind of compare this to what Zach Wilson has looked like, what Bryce Young has looked like, and they're right. They're right, man. This is bad, bottom of the barrel bad. He was double clutching, like I mentioned already. When he thought there was kind of pressure coming in around him, he actually had a pretty clean pocket, and he was trying to step up into the pocket where they're just, he's getting closer to the guys up front and running into sacks, and that isn't what had to happen. He had time to sit back there and read what the defense was giving him, but he was too worried about the pressure around him, and his eyes came down and didn't do what he had to do. One specific play that I can think of, I believe it was 4th down at the goal line, or maybe it was 3rd down, it was 3rd down. He kind of starts stepping up in the pocket and decides he's got to run and gets stopped on 3rd down. And Tyrone Tracy's kind of coming up the field to block, and then he breaks off last minute. Was it going to be a tough throw for Daniel Jones to make? Yes. But the thing is, it was right in front of him. He was seeing it. He saw him break away. And had he been able to get the ball to him there, that may have been a touchdown with Tyrone Tracy. Now, tough play, yes. I'm not disputing that. And especially with Daniel Jones processing and everything that he's seeing right now, he just doesn't look like an NFL quarterback. And it's very concerning. Last year, I was willing to kind of give him a pass on the opening weeks against Dallas, and then coming back against the Raiders, coming back from the injury. But this was bad, guys. It's just bad. Better offensive line, better weapons, hopefully better play calling, and he just was not able to react, to make the NFL reads, to get the ball up quickly at all. Obviously, I watch a lot of college football. I'm a big Syracuse Orange fan, and I watch Kyle McCord right now like a hawk, because I want to see what a good quarterback looks like. And it's kind of crazy to watch, but you see Kyle McCord, you see even honestly, I believe his name is Haynes King for Georgia Tech the other day on Saturday. They both know how to process an offense. They know how to read a defense. They know how to get the ball out quickly. Kyle McCord specifically looks like an NFL quarterback. Obviously, he came over from Ohio State. They kind of forced him out. He looks like the real deal. I'm really curious to see how he starts rising in the quarterback market here. He is a senior. You go into last year and people were talking about UDFA. Beginning of this year, they're talking about 7th round pick. He has 8 touchdown passes, 1 interception, like 800 yards or something like that. I'm not sure on the exact amount of yards, but he looks like a pro quarterback. He looks better than Daniel Jones. Now, yes, yet you can't talk about that too much, because we're talking about the difference between an ACC game in college versus the NFL and reading NFL defenses. It's a completely different game, and I understand that. But you didn't see that out of Daniel Jones in college, quite honestly, either. You thought that they were going to try to develop it and kind of rely on the kind of the gunslinger mentality that he seemed to show. But he's broken, man. He's broke. Kyle McCord, Syracuse Orange, looks like a way better quarterback than what I'm seeing out of Daniel Jones this year. And I'm sure there's more. That's probably the guy I focused in on the most. Obviously, you have your other bigger guys, the Georgia guy, the Penn State guy. I mean, there's a lot of good quarterback play in college football right now. It's too early to really make those claims, but just telling you what I'm seeing right now out of Kyle McCord versus Daniel Jones. So let's do one little side tangent here with Daniel Jones, and then we'll kind of move on. Once again, I don't want to make this a DJ slander episode, like Terry Slayton calls it. No DJ slander here, guys. But he is this close right now to losing the entire fan base, and the coaches. Quite honestly, I think he's already lost probably the support of like 95% of Giants Nation. Ultimately, Brian Daboll already said that he's going to start this week. I think that's the right move. I think you can't make a knee-jerk reaction off of 1 week. But at the same time, I think he is going to be on an extremely, extremely short leash this week. If we get to halftime and we have 3 points and we're down 10-3 against a Commanders team that does not look any better than the Giants, there's going to be a short leash. And whether that's bringing in Drew Lock, which I think ultimately is the move that you make, and then give him a half, give him a quarter, and then give him the first team reps next week to prepare for the Cleveland Browns. Daniel Jones is on a very, very short leash, and if he comes in playing anything remotely close to what he played this week, it's going to be a short leash. And guys, one little side note here. Booing him while he's trying to walk out of the stadium, get home. He's not happy, guys. I don't love it. Give the guy a break at that point. He's going home. He's trying to get out of there. I'm sure he's just as uncomfortable as possible. Yeah, no one likes the results, but boo him on the field. Let him get home and do his thing. I didn't love that. Next, let's talk about the offensive line, because that was kind of the other part about this that I really kind of looked at and was like, I don't know, did some of the blame go on the offensive line? There was 5 sacks, there was multiple pressures, hurries. Like, it wasn't pretty as to what you really saw. The run game wasn't amazing, but ultimately, I think the run game wasn't horrible. You saw some good things. Obviously, the designed Daniel Jones runs I didn't love, especially that happened on 3rd down, and then they did it again on 4th down, literally back-to-back plays. but I think it was a little bit maybe more to do with the Vikings defense not really respecting the pass to where they were ready to sit on any type of run game. They knew that Daniel Jones was going to want to run the ball. A lot of times they're just rushing three and had people to fill the run lanes. They didn't blitz a bunch, so they were ready for it. They were ready for pretty much anything that we wanted to throw at them. Ivan Pace Jr. was right. It wasn't a contest. It was embarrassing. Didn't like that he said that. And if that was somebody on my team, I would not like it. Still, I'd rather the more humble approach on something like that. But ultimately, he was right. Maybe next week we do need to give the ball a little bit more to Devin Singletary. Maybe Tyrone Tracy needs to get some more snaps. I didn't mind what I saw from Eric Gray, but he also gave up a sack, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. So pass protection looks to still be an issue for him when he's in. But let's look at pass blocking. Like I mentioned earlier, guys, Daniel Jones had 2.82 seconds to throw according to Next Gen Stats. And what else? There's 12 hurries. How many of those were attributed to the offensive line, guys? 4. A third of those hurries were attributed to the offensive line. The other 8, the other 2/3 of this was attributed to Daniel Jones. Not a good look. Also, 1 sack out of the 5, according to PFF, was the offensive line. So what does that tell you guys? That is kind of absurd. And that sack falls on Jon Runyan. But overall, Andrew Thomas, no pressures or sacks allowed. Stud, normal. Jon Runyan, 2 pressures, 1 sack. Didn't look great, I would say. He looked all right. Not the worst offensive lineman on the team. I think maybe it was Bobby Skinner said something along the lines of, maybe it wasn't him. I don't remember who it was for sure on Twitter or X. One of the pressures allowed by Jon Runyan, and maybe it was even the sack, was just not trusting that Andrew Thomas had his guy. He kind of didn't have anybody. Somebody was looping around. I think it was Van Ginkel. And Jon Runyan right at the last second kind of turned to help out Andrew Thomas. And Van Ginkel just came sliding right through. I believe it was him. JMS numbers, PFF weren't great, but he only had 1 pressure. Jermaine Illuminar had 3 pressures, held down the right side pretty well. Not great, not bad. And then Greg Van Roten probably had the worst showing, 4 pressures on the offensive line, but no sacks. And quite honestly, if you're really thinking about it, last year that would have been like the best, maybe not the best, the second best performance on the offensive line, which is pretty absurd. So progress on the offensive line, not perfect, but progress, probably an average offensive line to maybe just a little bit above average. Week 1, really with all the guys first time they're really actually playing together. Obviously preseason that didn't happen a lot, but you like what you saw. Running backs, we'll maybe talk about them a little bit, and there's really not a lot to take away from it. I think I liked what I saw out of Devin Singletary for the most part. He did take a screen and had a couple of good little shifts and shiftiness and cuts that you like to see. Nothing spectacular other than that one main screen play. Eric Gray was responsible for a sack, like I mentioned, in pass protection. Tyrone Tracy really didn't do a lot, but he didn't look bad either at the same time. There were a few drops on the running backs out of the 5 drops that were there. But the offensive line overall played pretty well. I lumped the running backs kind of in that as well because I did want to highlight the Eric Gray sack that he gave up. But overall, like that unit in general, nothing bad. Nothing that you would maybe that you didn't see on the standard view on TV, but with the next gen stuff and the all 22, they looked fine. Tight ends, Theo Johnson had a drop, but he did play most of the snaps. It looked like Chris Manhertz really didn't play much. It looked like Bellinger really didn't play much. So this is Theo's position, it looks like. Once again, didn't really do a lot, seemed to have a drop. Daniel Jones missed him multiple times. A couple other times I think maybe had a catch, but nothing crazy. Wide receivers, Malik, what do you really want to say about him? As advertised, looked good running routes, got separation obviously as well, and did have one drop I think early, but once again on a throw that really shouldn't have been thrown to him. It was an RPO. Daniel Jones did not read the linebacker, which is another concern, and instead of handing the ball off to Singletary like he should have, he kept it and tried throwing it to Malik Neighbors. Neighbors also didn't have a lot of opportunities for yards after the catch. But I think that'll come more in the coming weeks. People are kind of making a big deal about some of the stuff he said after the game, and I really think there isn't much there. People are trying to make something out of nothing here. He was really just saying, hey guys, I'm running my routes. I'm not really looking back at the quarterback and knowing exactly what's going on there. I'm just trying to run my routes and do my job. And people try to run with it and say that he doesn't know what Daniel Jones is doing back there. That's not what he was saying at all. But people are going to jump to conclusions on things like that. Other receivers, Wan'Dale Robinson, open consistently. Daniel Jones missed him multiple times, whether it was inaccurate throws or just not seeing him and too worried about the potential pressure in front of him. Really disappointing there because I think Wan'Dale could have had a crazy good game here. Just very inconsistent on passes. Not a good look. Not a good look there at all. But that wasn't on Wan'Dale. Wan'Dale did his job. Darius Slayton didn't really do much, had a couple catches. Really was a primary wide receiver too, although not the most targeted. Obviously, I think that went to Wan'Dale and then Malik Neighbors. But he was wide receiver too, primarily. Hyatt really didn't play much. He only logged 15 snaps. Kind of seems like there might be something there. Maybe not adapting well to being the backup to Darius Slayton, not liking that, maybe being a little immature. When he did play towards the end of the game, he did have one pass thrown his way. And Daniel Jones just airmailed it, sailed it over his head. He did get a hand on it. So, I think if you asked him, he'd probably say that's a catch he needs to make. But it wasn't a good throw. It was a really tough throw, very high, not something that was catchable ultimately. I do want to see more of Hyatt. I want to see him get more looks. If Slayton really isn't making a lot of plays, and once again, maybe that's more on Daniel Jones, but I do want to see Hyatt get a little bit more of that target share in snaps at the wide receiver 2 position. That's all for the offense, guys. Let's jump over to the defense. And my key of the game, I guess we'll say, it was the front 7, and that was really the key to this game to me, getting pressure on the edge and trying to make Sam Darnold step up and just overall be uncomfortable in this game, and that did not happen. Obviously, Dexter Lawrence got some pressure early, and he played a good game. He did have a sack. Brian Burns seemed to be getting chipped a lot and having extra protection over there with tight ends. Kayvon Thibodeau just seemed to do nothing. Not a good look there. Really somebody that didn't log any significant stats, no tackles at all. Just an overall bad look for him. And I did even hear rumors that he may have potentially gotten benched toward the end of the game. I don't know if that's true. Aziz did have 24 snaps, but that could have been kind of a combination of rest for Kayvon and for Brian Burns. So the front 7 ultimately really did not perform up to expectations. I do think Bobby Okereke played well. I did like what I saw out of Darius Muasau. Was very confused as to why he started, but it sounds like McFadden was on a pitch count if he did play. So the plan was to have Muasau start and then go with a flow, kind of see how he plays. And then, if he was a disaster, then they would have probably had Micah McFadden come in toward the end of the game. We'll see what happens there, because I do think that I like what I saw out of Muasau, but you just small sample size 1 week against a team where nothing offensively was working and defensively nothing amazing either. So like I said, I mentioned that already. I like what I saw out of Darius Muasau. Other guys, offensive or defensively, I did like what I saw out of Tyler Nubin and Andrew Phillips. Drew Phillips had a PFF grade of 84, which is awesome, but he only had, I think 14 or 15, or maybe it was 20 snaps, something along those lines. So not technically somebody that had 25 snaps. So I didn't really include it in like a player of the game or type anything like that. Obviously Dex did his job, 92 grade on PFF, and Pinnock had a decent grade as well. But like I said, really the story to me of this game on the defensive side was the front 7, not getting pressure, not making Sam Darnold uncomfortable, which was very important in this game. We let him get comfortable. He had short throws early to kind of get the flow, and then when he had some opportunities later on in the game, he was comfortable in the pocket and he made those throws. Defensively, obviously, we really only allowed 21 points. There was a pick 6 in there. Overall, I'm not necessarily upset with what the defense did. Justin Jefferson had 4 catches for 59 yards and a touchdown. And Banks had good coverage on that touchdown. If you actually see the other side of the play, the end zone view, he actually got his hand in there. He was maybe just a tick slow on reacting to it, and it almost looked like Justin Jefferson kind of caught it in like the crook of his arm here, and it kind of just came through. Just a good play, good receiver, guys. Justin Jefferson is that guy. He made a hell of a catch. Other than that, he really didn't do too much. Obviously, he had the one deep play with a good throw from Sam Darnold. Other than that, didn't do a lot. So you kind of really liked what you saw defensively with some parts of it. The biggest thing, like I said, was not getting any pressure. And that's what you don't like. Kind of a short synopsis, I think, on the defense, but end of the day, this game wasn't about the defense. This game was about Daniel Jones and how bad the offense looked. Once again, I was ready to criticize Brian Daboll's play calling and stuff of that nature, but you're getting guys open. And that's really all you can ask for. At the end of the day, the quarterback needs to make the reads. The guys of the game, if you will, I'm not really going to call them studs, but we'll go with the guys of the game here. Andrew Thomas, 0 pressures, holding down the left tackle spot, doing what he does all day, in and out, just ultimately a stud. So maybe I should call him a stud. Dexter Lawrence, 6 pressures, 5 hurries, and a sack. Did everything you asked him to do. One of the few guys on the interior defensive line that made his presence known. I was considering putting Malik Neighbors on this. Obviously, the 3.9 yards of separation, 5 catches for 66 yards. I think he did everything he needed to do to be a stud. He just didn't get the ball a lot, so it's really kind of hard to include him on this list. So my only 2 guys, these guys, are Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence. Do want to give a shout out to the offensive line. Once again, I don't think the offensive line was amazing. I think they were average to above average. But when you're coming from the offensive lines that we're familiar with as a New York Giant, they were pretty good. Happy with what I saw. Definitely you need to look at things a little bit more. You need to read the advanced metrics and stuff of that nature to get that feeling. And maybe you just need to see Daniel Jones trying to step up in the pocket when he already had a clean pocket. But I think overall they played pretty well. My Jag performance, just a guy performance, if you get it, Kayvon Thibodeau. You had a tough matchup, man. Darisaw is a great tackle, but you got to do something, man. You got to win a couple reps. You got to make some tackles. You got to set the edge a little bit. And ultimately, it just didn't seem like he did anything. Show us more. Next week, it is week 1. And kind of the same thing with Brian Burns there. I'm not necessarily going to call him a Jag, but Kayvon Thibodeau, absolutely a Jag. And lastly, Daniel Jones. Obviously, the worst of the worst there. Once again, like I said, he's going to be on a very, very short leash next week. I really strongly believe that if we get into like the second quarter and it's 3-10 or 3-17, man, that leash better be pulled. I hope that Brian Daboll recognizes that, and I understand they're kind of tied to him a little bit, but at the same time, if you want to win games this year, you need to make this decision quicker rather than later as to if he is the guy or isn't the guy. And being average doesn't make Daniel Jones the guy. Being good to great is what makes Daniel Jones a guy this year, and he was nowhere near that. That's all I got, guys. Schedule moving forward here, probably Thursday we'll get a preview pod out, previewing the Giants at Commanders on Sunday at 4:00. May try to get a Washington Commanders beat, or maybe just a Washington fan on for that episode, just to get a little bit of a take from them. Obviously, I haven't watched that game yet, although I do plan on watching that this week to just see how they looked. I didn't like a lot that I saw from Jaden Daniels, but we'll come back to that. That's all I got for you guys today. Let's go Big Blue.